The Srebrenica flower is a powerful symbol of remembrance and resilience. To speak on its meaning, I now welcome Mrs. Lizeta Zečević.
Thank you, Madam. Dear distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, thank you for coming today to commemorate the years of Srebrenica genocide. In my 2024, the UN General Assembly, in a resolution sponsored by Germany and Rwanda, designed 11 July as the International Day of Reflection and commemoration of the 1995 genocide in Srebrenica. The Assembly also asked the Secretary General to establish an outreach program entitled the Srebrenica Genocide and the United Nations. Srebrenica Genocide has a symbol. The group of women in Bosnia created this symbol as a Srebrenica flower, and mothers of Srebrenica accepted and approved this symbol. It is a symbol of memory for the Srebrenica genocide which occurred in July 1995. The flower's design carries special meanings. Its 11 petals represent the date of the massacre, July 11, 1995. This day, when Serbian army in 5 days killed more than 8,000 men, women, and children. The white color symbolized the innocence of the victims, and the green in center signifies hope for justice and recognition of the genocide. The Srebrenica flower is typically worn on the left side of the body and usually on clothing near the heart. This placement is symbolic, signifying that the genocide is remembered close to the heart and is never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Zečević. Our next speaker has long been a voice for human rights in Australia, and it is our pleasure to now welcome Professor Dr. Seb Ozdolski.
Thank you, Nikada, for your kind introduction and also for your welcome to country. Thank you also to respected Imam Mahmed Khan for the prayers. Welcome to all of you, and in particular to our distinguished guest, His Excellency Kemal Muftit, Ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina to Australia and New Zealand, Honorable Ed Husic MP, representing here within federal government, Safet Al-Sahid, President of the Bosnian community of New South Wales, of course Gregson, who spoke first from Universal Peace Federation Oceania. Also, I welcome all other speakers, both local and from interstate, and here I would like to especially mention Professor David Pettigrew from Canada, all distinguished members of Bosnian community, survivors of this terrible war, ladies and gentlemen, all. Thank you for inviting me to address this important commemoration. This marks the 30th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide, in which over 8,000 Muslim men and boys were murdered, in the worst atrocity on European soil since Second World War. They were murdered because of their religious identity. They were murdered in a town once considered a melting pot of cultures in which Muslims, Christians, Jews, and others lived side by side in peace. Today we remember those who were killed, and we honor their loved ones who survived. We stand with them in their ongoing quest for justice. I accepted this invitation not only because of my sorrow for victims of Srebrenica and for my personal commitment to human rights. I have accepted it also because I was born in Poland shortly after the Second World War, and I understand the tragedy of Bosnian people. As you know, my country of birth has witnessed many genocidal events throughout its history. During the Second World War, in German-occupied Poland, we witnessed the Jewish Holocaust and the Nazi-constructed concentration camps, or possibly more correctly, industrialized slaughterhouses for humans. And today, some deny that Holocaust ever happened. Some say there were no gas chambers in Auschwitz. Poles also remember that during the Second World War, the Soviet NKVD murdered 23,000 Polish military and intelligentsia prisoners of war in Katyn forests. And some contemporary Russian leaders still refuse to acknowledge that it happened. I still remember my family members and friends waiting for the loved ones to return home long after the war had finished, making frantic inquiries with the Red Cross to find their relatives, or simply trying to establish where the graves are located. There is no doubt about what happened in Srebrenica 30 years ago. The Srebrenica genocide is well documented. In July 1995, over 8,000 Bosniak men and teenage boys from the regions were massacred by the nationalist Bosnian Serb forces under the command of General Ratko Mladic, a convinced war criminal. Bosniak men, some as young as 15, were separated from women and the elderly, stripped of their personal belongings. Then they were deliberately and methodically killed because of their Muslim identity. 3 years ago, I visited Srebrenica Potokari Genocide Memorial Cemetery. In the middle of the cemetery, there is a memorial wall on which the names of 8,372 victims are engraved. I still remember that forest of white columns going from horizon to horizon to commemorate people who were killed there. What was particularly difficult to understand is that this ethnic cleansing happened with UN forces nearby. First, disarming the local Muslims and offering them a safe haven, and then withdrawing and leaving Bosniaks to their fate. But it is especially difficult that this happened over there, and the fact that genocide happened is beyond any reasonable doubt, but there are still people who are denying that it's happened. The events in Srebrenica 30 years ago represent more serious violations of international humanitarian and human rights law. They represent a breach of the United Nations Charter adopted 80 years ago. Article 1st of the Charter defines promotion of human rights as one of the UN objectives. The Srebrenica genocide also represents a breach of many international laws established to protect human rights, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and also the UN Convention on Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide that was adopted as early as in 1948. The convention defined genocide as a crime usually committed by government or an arm of it with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, linguistic or religious group. The convention also established that people committing genocide or inciting it or conspiring to commit it or complicit in genocide should be punished. That clearly means that the international law established that genocide is a crime against humanity and that all people associated with it should be severely punished. Furthermore, it needs to be mentioned that 1 year before the genocide in Srebrenica in April 1993, the world leaders adopted the UN Security Council resolution in which they assured Bosniaks that Srebrenica would be treated as, and I quote, a safe area which should be free from any armed attacks, and demanded that Republika Srpska army withdraws from that area. Regrettably, despite all the international law, United Nations resolutions and assurances that the genocide took place, thus in contemporary UN system of protection, we must say it has failed the victims of Srebrenica, and it's especially disappointing that UN didn't learn from earlier experiences. Only 1 year earlier, there was a genocide in Rwanda. There was enough time to get the system in order and ensure that these things will not happen again. After the massacre, several measures were taken by the international community. The International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, as well as the International Court of Justice, unanimously ruled that it was an act of genocide. There is no doubt, genocide. International law said so. General Ratko Mladic, who commanded the forces, was convicted of genocide by UN War Crime Tribunal in Hague, alongside with their political leader Radovan Karadzic. But the creation of laws, legal institutions, and prosecution of perpetrators are not enough to deliver justice to victims and prevent occurrences of genocide in the future. So it needs to be done, and some speakers already spoke about it, but we first, for sure, need to ensure that victims of Srebrenica genocide are remembered. However, today's commemoration cannot be only an event of sorrow and remembrance. It also needs to be an essential occasion for educating others that acts of genocide begin with targeting and dehumanizing groups of people. We need to stand together against hatred, discrimination, prejudice here in Australia and elsewhere, and to work for safer, stronger, and more cohesive communities. We need to build bridges to reconciliation. There is no place for those who deny genocide, need to attempt to rewrite history or glorify war criminals. By remembering the pain of the past, we can collectively work to ensure that these horrific tragedies never happened again. Therefore, I welcome very much the UN General Assembly resolution nominating the 11th July as annual day of reflection and commemoration on the genocide in Srebrenica. And therefore, I congratulate you, the Bosnian community, on holding commemoration each year on the anniversary of this massacre. I would like to see here much more Australians of non-Bosnian origin being with you and learning from you what has happened, because these commemorations are a significant event not only for the Bosnian community but for all Australians, as today Australia is a multicultural society built on respect for many cultures and religions. Thus, we should use the Srebrenica Memorial Day both to commemorate victims of genocide and also commit ourselves to creating Australia a more cohesive, stronger and safer society, free of hatred, discrimination and prejudice. So let us take some personal responsibility for treating our fellow humans with dignity and respect. This will build a world free of prejudice, of hate toward people who have different religions, ethnicities from us. Lest we forget Srebrenica. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. We now come to one of the most powerful moments in today's program, a testimony of survival. It's our honour to welcome Mrs. Mirela Muratovic, a survivor of the Srebrenica genocide. Her story is not only a reminder of the tragedy, but also a testament of courage, resilience, and the strength of the human spirit. Mirela, we are deeply humbled by your presence and grateful that you are here to share your truth with us.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, respected organisers from the Bosnian Community Council of New South Wales and the Universal Peace Federation of Australia, survivors and dear friends. I too acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. My name is Mirela Muratovic, and I am a survivor of the Srebrenica genocide. I was born in Zvornik, near Srebrenica, in 1990. I have a twin brother and two older brothers. We lived in a village called Jezero, which is approximately about 30 kilometers from the town of Srebrenica. We lived here until the beginning of 1993, where the sounds of artillery and sniper fire echoed through the village every day. Danger was near. When my father and my uncle recognized that danger, we relocated to a nearby town called Osad. From there, we relocated many times. Little did we know what's waiting for us. On the 6th of March, 1993, when I was about 2.5 years old, my mother, Jeva, determined to help her family survive. She left with 2 cousins to search for food. She never returned. Not long after that, on the morning of July 11th, 1995, my father Munib, together with his cousins, left through the forest, hoping they would survive. His last words were to his brother, my uncle, to look after us, his children. He never returned. Both of my parents were the victims of the Srebrenica genocide. They were killed, and they were simply taken from us because of who they were. Today, I carry with me not just the scars of war, but the memories of a childhood interrupted by unimaginable loss. My father's remains were buried in 2010 in Potechai, and I pray that one day we will also find my mother and her remains, and she will be buried too. My uncle, he kept his promise. He cared for me and my brothers through the darkest times. And he safely brought us to Australia in 2002, the country we call home today. I know my parents would be so proud to know that they have 10 grandchildren. One of them who proudly carries my father's name. These children will grow up, and they are growing up to know who their grandparents were. And they will carry their memory and their story forward forever with strength and pride. Ladies and gentlemen, I have only briefly shared my story with you today, just a small part of my story. There is much more. Behind all my words, each of my words are pain, are years of pain and trauma. But today I speak because silence allowed Srebrenica to happen. And I, as the survivor of the Srebrenica genocide, I will not allow it to happen again to no one and nowhere. We all must understand that genocide does not end when the killing stops. It ripples through generations and generations to come. It leaves deep scars and many unanswered questions. It leaves emotional wounds that never heal, never fully heal. I, as the survivor, I carry my trauma in my stories, in my heart. It's very hard to stand here today and tell my story. It always brings sadness and pain that I can't explain to you. But like I said earlier, I will forever speak. I will not allow the truth to be buried with the victims of Srebrenica. To this day, there are people out there who deny genocide, who deny the Srebrenica genocide. They refuse to acknowledge the atrocities committed not only in Srebrenica, but in Prijedor, in Foča, Zvornik, Visegrad, and countless other towns across Bosnia. There are many families searching for the remains of the loved ones today, still after 30 years. The genocides committed in these places must never be a matter of political interests. We must continue to fight for the truth and for all genocides around the world to be recognized. Today we are witnessing another genocide in Gaza, where the whole world is watching and witnessing the division and hatred while the suffering continues. There are entire families, as we speak today, that are being wiped out. Children being buried under rubble. Civilians being starved. Denied access to food, water and medical aid. This is exactly what happened in Srebrenica 30 years ago, where Srebrenica was meant to be a United Nations protected zone. We believed that they were under international protection, that we were under the international protection. But when the moment of truth came, the UN failed. And when powerful voices remain silent, this is when innocent people pay the price. Sorry. My message to the whole world is, we cannot be selective. We must unite, whether it's Gaza, whether it's Bosnia, Rwanda, or anywhere else, because every life matters. And every genocide must be remembered and acknowledged and stopped before another generation is lost. It is everyone's responsibility. It belongs to all of us. So please teach the younger generations about the truth. Teach them to challenge denial and to never stay silent, because human lives matter. It's through truth and education we can hope for a better tomorrow. I see there are a few children in this room today. And my message to all the children out there, my message is to you that you ask questions. You ask questions because you need to carry these stories forward. You are the future of our world and the future of our truth. Learn the stories and share them with your friends. Share them with everyone that you know. Because one day it will be your voices carrying my story forward and the story of Srebrenica. Make sure that the world never forgets Srebrenica and that our history is never erased. We must act and we must educate in order to prevent genocides. We need to unite for truth and for peace. Now I thank you again, everyone, for giving me the space to share my story today. Thank you all for remembering. And thank you for standing with me and all the survivors present here today. Never forget Srebrenica. Thank you.